morning and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm Robert Phoenix, getting back in the groove here now, coming at you in the morning, soon to be every day, highlighting the highs and the lows of where we are culturally, collectively, cosmically, and just about as much as I can in between all those spheres to the best of my ability. I want to thank everybody for their concern about my brief trip to the hospital, which has turned out to be actually a real blessing in disguise. And I was a little remiss when I did the show last week. I forgot to mention that my girlfriend Kimberly played a significant role in helping me kind of get through that moment. So props to Kimberly for all of that. Thank you very much. I want to get into the state of where we are with the run-up to the inauguration, but I want to play something first before we get into this. I'm going to get to a piece that Preston James wrote, which of all the guys from Veterans Today, I like Preston the best because I've read a number of his articles over the years, and I just checked the box. Yes, 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 yes. Preston gets it. Gordon, I don't know, man. I don't know about Gordon. And Jim Fetzer. Jim Fetzer's everywhere. Every time I go to a YouTube channel, there's Jim Fetzer, Jim Fetzer, Jim Fetzer. Anyway, I'm going to go to a Preston James piece that he wrote a little bit later in our half hour together today to give you some thoughts that I think are very relevant and I've been talking about for a while. But before I do that, let me play you this little piece of video/audio. It is, I stumbled upon this today. It is kind of mind-blowing. I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to give you context. I'm going to play it for you. It's about 3 minutes long. And then when we come out the other side, I'm going to talk about this and try to put it into some context. It is from a show during the 1950s called Trackdown. And it has to do, was one of the Westerns. It was not a very well-known Western. Westerns were big in the 50s. And the main character is played by Robert Culp. Now, Robert Culp is an interesting cat. He would surface later on in a show called I Spy that was produced and directed by Sheldon Leonard. And Sheldon Leonard gave us some other very interesting shows like Get Smart. But I Spy was a kind of a cultural breakthrough, and that it launched Bill Cosby into the mainstream as a co-lead in a show with a white character. It was kind of groundbreaking. And they were actually they were CIA, they worked for the CIA, but they were tennis players going all around the world. And of course, we knew what happened to Bill Cosby. Anyway, Robert Culp plays the lead in Trackers, or the Trackdown's in the show. And it's about Texas Rangers tracking down bad guys. So there you go. There is the premise. Let me play you the video. Hold up. Here we go. Queuing it up. Oh, come on. Here we go. Trackdown.
bring you the means with which to save yourselves. Save us from what? From the end of the world, friend. Which I don't expect you to believe. But the rest of you, those who want to be alive tomorrow morning, I will tell you tonight. Remember that. Bring your friends here. I'll tell you tonight, so that you will be able to prepare. What are you selling, Mr. Snake Oil? The world will come to a flaming end at midnight tonight. Without my help and knowledge, every one of you will be dead. Got a name?
Tom.
I bet it fits. Planning to remain until how long? Well, I understand I have until midnight. And you've heard? Yeah, I heard. Your name is Trump? All right, Sheriff. How long are you going to put up with this? What do you mean? How long are you going to let this con man walk around town? Be careful, son. I can sue you. How about it, Sheriff? When are you going to put the lid on? What for? Well, stealing is stealing, whether you do it with a gun or a mouthful of mean words. I don't intend to sit here and be insulted, Sheriff. If your people don't want my help, I can go elsewhere. Wait a minute, Mr. Trump. You don't talk for the rest of us. Since the sheriff wouldn't stop Trump, we had to find somebody who would. Sheriff Chet Farrow was the gun law in Tulpa, and Judge Clement was the book law. You hear about Trump? Yes, sir. What are you going to do about it? What do you want me to do? Stop him. From what? From taking a town. Can you prove that that's what he has in mind? It's obvious. But can you prove it? In order to arrest him, the sheriff has to have a charge. And Trump hasn't given him a thing to go on. Well, there's got to be some way to stop him. Well, if there is, I don't know it. It's a funny thing. Sir, when we were kids, we were all afraid of the dark. Then we grew up, we weren't afraid anymore, but it's funny how a big lie can make us all kids again. When they had checked the town, the people were ready to believe. Like sheep, they ran toward the slaughterhouse. And waiting for them was the high priest of fraud. I am the only one. Just me. I can build a wall around your homes that nothing will penetrate. What do we do? How do we save ourselves? You ask, how do you build that wall? You ask, and I'm here to tell you. You're a liar, Trump. You're not going to be in a ring of fire. Can you deny the meteorites will come? Can you deny the comet? But it's not going to happen the way you say it is. Aren't you going to stay for the fireworks? Huh? Looks like they're going to go for everything's done. I've done all I can for Tulsa. Think it's time for me to be moving on. Well, I think you ought to wait. That's where you and I disagree. You're under arrest, Trump. What charge? Well, you write it any way you like. Grand theft, fraud, I think a jury will find it stealing.
How about that? So the premise of the story from the 1958 TV series Trackdown is that a guy by the name of Trump comes to town and he looks like a wizard. And he rolls in on a wagon and he's covered in cymbals and has a drum. Absolutely fascinating. And he plans to build a wall to save the people of the town from a fiery end with comets and meteorites raining fire down upon them. How about that? From 1958, Trump building a wall. Now, you have to ask yourself, how does this happen? Is there a time traveler involved? Do they go back in time and write the script? It's quite possible. But the other thing is that Trump's father, Fred Trump, was fairly well known at that time in certain circles. And maybe the wall is part of Fred and Donald's legacy. Maybe that was really Fred's dream, and Donald is carrying out the concept of the wall. the mission of the wall. It would not be uncommon for screenwriters during that time to know somebody like Fred Trump, and maybe through some conversation, even casual affiliation, come to know the character of the man and his design and plan. How about that? From 1958, Trump Trackdown. So, hey, it's 9/11 right now. 9/11. How about that? So I wanted to go to Preston Nichols. Hold on a second. Let me get this up here. Preston James' piece on Veterans Today. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because Preston James tends to write these epically long pieces. And they're good, don't get me wrong. They're good. But I want to read some of this. And this has been my contention. Remember, I have said that Trump is a cultural disruptor. That is his main impetus and thrust symbolically. It is the sun, Uranus conjunction in Gemini, true north in Gemini. He is a cultural disruptor. That is his greatest gift, disrupting the chain of title, essentially, from Reagan, Bush through Obama. He broke it. He broke the pattern, which is very liberating. Let me read this to you. Time to stop the deconstruction of America. This is Preston James, published yesterday, Veterans Today. It's time for we the people to take our republic and boot the globalists out. And Preston says Trump was able to ride the new wave of populism that is sweeping America that emerged from the internet, the new Gutenberg press. This got him elected as president. Now it's time for we the people to apply political pressure at every level of government to make sure that he does what he promised and that populism continues to spread and intensify at every level of American society. The globalists view this new powerful populism that has emerged as a vicious enemy that will destroy them unless stopped. This is an accurate appraisal of their chances of stopping it now are pretty slim. Efforts by the globalists to do so will surely create massive backlash and blowback and only intensify the emerging populism and the speed of its emergence. If Trump turns out to be a secret Zionist stooge, as some fear, we the people can still continue our new wave of populism and eventually create enough political pressure to obtain the changes we need. This is exactly what I've been talking about, and this is really what's called for. It's not enough to have the king disruptor show up and really, blow up some old programs. It's not enough for that. We have to be just as vigilant as the left is. And I'm not putting myself on the side of the right or the conservatives. I am putting myself in a position where we can actually begin to use tools like truth and integrity and authenticity. These are really important, and freedom. These are really important tools that we have at our disposal. And what happens is whenever a president gets elected, we give the power over to that president. It's natural. It's a natural state of affairs. But this time it's different. This time we are actually engaged in something that is more personal than it's ever been before. I'll read on here. It may be more difficult and take longer, but thanks to the internet, the new Gutenberg press, American populism will not go away, but will continue to grow rapidly by leaps and bounds. I completely agree with this. As people's tongues get untied, as they become clearer and clearer with their own conscience that they are, number one, not bad people. Number two, they're not bad people, and number two, that their efforts to be able to exert change will not be diminished by any capacity. It's necessary for our nation's survival as a republic, and we must all work together collectively to make certain that the City of London, COL, private Illuminati banksters, are booted from America and no longer allowed to jeopardize it. It's not just America. It is a global phenomenon. People are waking up from the trance. Now, what happens when people wake up from the trance, and I've talked about this before, is that there is this technique, which is the revelation of the method, and it becomes a more hypnotized and highly inductive technique to drop people deeper into the trance. That's why Alex Jones exists. Alex Jones is that guy. Alex Jones is the gatekeeper of the next level of the trance. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. The current American system has worked out very well for the top 0.0001%, which is true. It's not 1%, it's 0.00001, and their close associates whom they can keep well supplied with money, status, and lavish lifestyles. But it has failed at least 80% of the rest, and the middle class has been blindsided by self-serving Congress and presidents and is shrinking rapidly into poverty that was never expected. The 0.0001 had to hijack the American government at all levels and corrupt society to obtain their level of control and asset stripping necessary to feed their lavish lifestyles. And sadly, we now know for certain that the 0.0001 has been stacking the U.S. Congress and using it, and they're typically bought and appointed presidents to institute massive deconstruction in the American public. This has been going on for a very long time, but the accelerated program really began on 11/23/1963, the day after John Kennedy died. Almost every member of the U.S. Congress has been bought off. So we said that in order to do this, they have bought off almost every member of Congress, most high USG officials, and instituted the USG policy of free trade and globalization in order to transform American workers into their serfs and slaves. One of the things that the Democratic Party was guilty of anything, and they've been guilty of quite a bit. Both parties have. Trust me, we all know this. The thing that the Democratic Party has been guilty of is that they abandoned the American worker. That's it. That was their most venal crime. The greatest sin was abandoning the American worker. Now, they did a good job of propping the American worker up during the 1940s and the 50s and the early 60s with the advent of the unions, run by basically crime labor bosses like Jimmy Hoffa. But they did a good job of protecting jobs. The downside of the unions, however, is that if the union demands get too big, they get too great, then what happens? It produces extreme costs and overages on the business side. And then eventually the cost of doing business gets too expensive. And if a business wants to stay in business, they'll move. Bottom line. It happened to my father back in the 1970s. He was a warehouseman. And I remember back in the day, my father told me he was making $12 an hour. And man, I thought that was a lot of money. I really did. $12 an hour. The minimum wage at that time was around $2.75, $2.85. I mean, my father was making, 5 times minimum wage. What did I know? But what happened was that the company he was working for eventually looked around and said, land is getting expensive, our rents are going up, the cost of doing business here is getting higher, we've got the union here, we got to get out of Dodge. We got to go to another place where it's cheaper. We can get cheaper labor and we can bring our costs down, so we're going to move our operation to Tennessee. And by the way, you're welcome to come if you want. You live in California, like, who wants to live in Tennessee? Are you kidding me? This happened to workers all around the country. This is at the end of the 1970s. This is moving from a production-oriented economy to the quote, great service economy. So to a large extent, the Democrats who were associated, affiliated, and aligned with the unions also helped create the problem by having, in some ways, too many overages and costs, and the unions became too strong in many instances. Now, I think there's a fine line here between being consigned to the shackles and chains of management, and on the other hand, being so aggressive with the demands of labor that eventually you wind up putting the business out of business and you're out of a job. There's a fine line there. But what happened was that during this phase, when that company my father worked for eventually went overseas and went to Korea. And during that phase in time, this is during the 80s and the 90s, the Democrats needed to rally and keep the jobs from going overseas. But instead, they got on the globalist train just like everybody else. And the globalist train has been picking up steam since the late 70s and the 80s. Actually, if you really want to know where the whole globalist dream starts, all you have to do is go to post-war Japan and the Marshall Plan, when millions and millions and millions of United States dollars were infused into Japan to rebuild the infrastructure, to rebuild the factories, and American industrialists went to Japan and started to get their products made even cheaper than they could be made in the United States. That's when globalism really starts. By the way, many of you know who Barbara Marx Hubbard is, the grande dame of Luciferic magic. Her father was Louis Marx, who was a toy maker. Some of you may remember a company called Marx Toys. Louis Marx was the first toy maker to have his toys manufactured in Japan and brought to the United States. So Barbara Marx Hubbard, her father, was one of the first globalists to that extent. But this is where the Democrats really failed. Now here we are. Let's move forward. We're about 3 days away now from completely 3 days away from the inauguration. And I think it's going to be, this is going to be like the Wild West on steroids. So we got the Million Woman March. It's going to happen on Saturday. And then we have the attendant chaos at the inauguration. This is going to be quite something. I don't think Trump is going to be taken out during the inauguration, not with the announcement that Hillary Clinton is going to be there, and not with the announcement that Bush is going to be there. How about that? Insurance policy, maybe, or just, hey, a sign that they're all on the same side. But what we have to do during this time, this is the most important piece. If you get anything out of what I'm sharing today, is that we have to keep the process moving forward. We have to keep this alive. We cannot allow Donald Trump and whatever his master plan is, and there might be some pieces in there that are actually good. I'm willing to see what happens. The guy's a Sun Uranus. If you ever hang around a Sun Uranus person, you will understand that there is a switch inside the Sun Uranus person. And you throw Gemini into that? I mean, that's a multitude of personalities living inside of one being. So, we don't know how Donald Trump is kind of like this character from a comic book in the 1960s, Dial H for Hero. And he had this little watch, and he would turn the dial on the watch, and he would be some kind of superhero. He didn't know what he would get. It could be some really cool superhero with amazing powers, or it could be some weird, quirky superhero with some odd superpower. Didn't know what you would get. It's kind of like Trump. So we've got to stay engaged in this process. We're at a turning point. The people have always said, well, when is it going to happen? When is the awakening? The awakening is happening right now, in this moment. So we have to stay vigilant with this process. And we can't just, now Trump is going to get jobs. That's the one thing I think he will do. He's got to do it. He's got, at the very least, he's got to make it look like he's doing it. But I think he will do it. I think he's going to get jobs. I think he's going to get people back to work. I think he's going to pump the shit out of the oil and the gas and tap into all those resources. Because that's where the money is. I think it's going to give him about a 2-year period of grace. And if people get that, then they'll be mollified. Theoretically. If they don't get that, then the masses will get restless. Now, I can't predict if the friction and the fractious nature of what's taken place since the election, I can't predict if that's going to subside. I don't necessarily think it is. I think we could be in for 4 years of intense, and I mean intense, culture war. We're here now, and it's a kind of amazing time to be alive. I just have to say. In closing, I've been spending some time sort of perusing some material on Alex Jones. And, I've always been wary of Alex. Always. And I got back into Alex because I wanted to see what he was talking about with Trump and his coverage of the election with Trump. And it was actually quite interesting. It was good. Some of it was confrontational. I wanted sort of the inside track on how the alt-right or the new media was going to get into this. And I got a pretty good dose, pretty good insight, and I'm moving on now. Alex Jones is, in my mind, one of the worst examples of a gatekeeper on the internet. And tomorrow I'll get into why you need to be wary of Alex Emmerich Jones. All right, this is Robert Phoenix. This has been your 15 minutes of flame. I'll see everybody tomorrow.
Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Yes, while Geico could help you rack up more moolah faster than you can say metamorphosis, they've also been the fastest growing auto insurer for more than 10 years. That's more like it. Furthermore, Geico has fast and friendly claim service. That might seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. All the more reason to say no other auto insurer has more than Geico. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.